Hello.
Our story begins in the lower levels of the capital of the Republic. ARC Trooper Fives was on the run for having attempted to assassinate the Chancellor. Before arriving to the Grand Republic Medical Facility on Coruscant, he was drugged by Kaminoan scientist Nala Se. Fives had no clue, as he was sleeping when it happened, and General Shaak Ti was in the other room of the ship when it happened. When Fives awoke, he was a bit loopy, but even if he wasn't drugged, he would be right for the way he responded to what Palpatine revealed to him. To be an individual responsible for so much carnage wasn't even feasible, and now, here he was. Fives was inside of a warehouse in the lower levels of the city. He was hopeful General Skywalker and Captain Rex could be good friends in such a trying time for him. Tragically, Fives knew the truth. He'd be killed if he was brought back to the Republic, or to the Jedi, or anywhere near Palpatine. He had too much power, and the former ARC Trooper knew it. As he was rummaging through his own mind, he could hear Anakin and Rex arrived. He ducked into cover quickly and awaited for them to get to his little trap. As they moved in position, he turned on the ray shields and trapped them. Skywalker and Rex weren't very happy about it, but Fives needed them to listen. He couldn't be taken back to Nala Se. She did something and he knew it, but he was too confused at the moment to piece everything together. It made everything look worse, as if the inhibitor chips inside of his head kept him in control. Now that he was drugged and erratic, it looked as if the lack of inhibitor chip caused him to spiral out of control. Anakin and Rex weren't really listening. Well, they were, but they weren't. Anakin was very upset at Fives for not only trying to assassinate the Chancellor, but accused him of being behind some type of terrible plot. He couldn't see past his own attachment to Palpatine, so he was very skeptical and unbelieving of Fives. But he did try and give some alternative solutions. However, they only made Fives more upset. He felt as if everything was going so wrong, like they were only trying to bring him back so he could be executed for treason. As all of this was going on, Ahsoka heard the commotion. She saw the Republic shuttle land on the landing dock, and she saw Anakin. Instead of jumping down to say hi, she kept to herself and stayed above their line of sight. She could hear Anakin continuously deny everything Fives was saying, which upset her. Ahsoka wasn't exactly fond of Palpatine for trying her for something she never did. While he wasn't at fault entirely, he didn't try and lessen the sentence for her. Facing death at the age of 16 wasn't her favorite memory as it was. Regardless, she looked down and saw out of the corner of her eye a bundle of Coruscant guardsmen enter from the side door. She knew that this wouldn't go well. Fives was clearly unhealthy, and she was afraid something would happen to him if she did not act. Ahsoka crept down from the beam over the warehouse to a couple of crates. She looked down and saw Fox and his men prepare to jump around the corner and attack Fives. Ahsoka was very familiar with this clone commander. He didn't use stun rounds when he fired at her, he had to be ordered to. She had no doubt that it would be the same thing here. Ahsoka could hear the madness in Fives' voice, but he was concerned about some sort of massive deception. Ahsoka saw her opportunity present itself, and as a bundle of clones ran around the corner, telling Fives to freeze, she leapt down off the crate and landed right in the middle, sending out a burst of energy around her. The clones went flying in the different locations, and she turned around, using the force to throw the remaining clones in the walls and the containers. She turned back, and Fives looked at her cross-eyed, and said Commander Tano in a questioning voice. She looked at Anakin, and then to Rex, before turning to Fives and telling him to come with her. He was afraid to, but she ran up and grabbed his hand, pulling him along, telling him that it wasn't safe for them here. He didn't understand, but she wasn't a threat, and he knew that, so he trusted her Jedi intuition. As she pulled Fives towards an exit, Anakin called out her name, and she stopped, pushing Fives ahead of her before turning back. She locked eyes with her former teacher and didn't break contact, until Commander Fox got up and prepared to shoot her. Ahsoka threw her hands forward and sent him flying into a container, before she looked back to Anakin and turned. He yelled her name, but she had already gone. He hit his hands on the ray shield and it didn't get him anywhere. Ahsoka and Fives continued running away as he asked where they were going. She just pushed her finger to her lips to quiet him, and they continued running through the alleyways. The two of them ran for what felt like hours, but it was to a temporary safe house that she had down here. It wasn't much of a safe house considering it was an abandoned garage, but it was better than nothing. Ahsoka grabbed some water and the last of her rations and handed it to the Fives, telling him to relax. She would keep him safe. He was still very panicked, and the frenzy in his mind had him rambling on and on and on until eventually the drugs did their job and knocked him out. Ahsoka laid Fives on a table and covered him up, before going out and checking to make sure they weren't followed. Since they were in the clear, she decided that she'd go out and find him in disguise. There were always drunks in the streets that would trade their articles of clothing for food or credits or smokes. Ahsoka figured out the trade game very quickly, and so she always had a pack of death sticks on her, so she could trade for whatever she needed. It wasn't her favorite thing in the galaxy, and it hurt her heart, but it was the only way she could survive. She just needed to find a job that would take her in, which she couldn't find any as of yet. On the other side of the city, Anakin and Rex were freed from the ray shield when one of the clones woke up and turned it off. Skywalker was so confused, hurt, and angry. Why didn't she stop? Was she mad at him? Did he do something wrong to her? He just didn't know, and it ate him up. Rex tried to assure him that he didn't do anything wrong. She was probably just nervous or stressed from the trauma of her uncanny exit from the Order. Anakin knew Rex was right, but he didn't want to accept it. He believed he had failed her. Why would she save Fives and no one else? Rex had a hard time with this answer, but Anakin was becoming hostile with Fives. His relationship with the Chancellor clouded his judgment, and Fives was irritated because he knew something. No offense to Anakin, but Rex was willing to believe his brother over someone who had a personal bias towards the Chancellor. He served with Fives for a long time, and it was very unlike him to just snap. Even after Echo died, he wasn't that upset. He obviously was heartbroken, that was his original squad mate, but he didn't become like this. Rex didn't believe that this was a result of Top's death, but something else. Rex wanted to do a deep dive into these inhibitor chips. Luckily, he might have his chance to do that because Anakin was tasked with finding Fives and Ahsoka. However, he wasn't pleased with the terms. Ahsoka would have to be brought in on accounts of treason for attacking Republic troopers and disrupting an ongoing investigation, which already wasn't the best look for her. Anakin was tasked with this because the Council, when the Republic officer in charge, believed that he would be the best individual for finding the culprits. At this point, Admiral Tarkin wasn't on Coruscant, so a young and more vibrant individual was heading everything, which was Admiral Rampart. Skywalker wasn't pleased with the instantaneous accusations against Ahsoka. However, there was one savior. Palpatine informed Anakin that if he could find Fives and bring in the justice, then they wouldn't have to worry about Ahsoka. He'd give her a pass, since he knew how important she was to him. Anakin was so grateful, and he believed this to be a great example of why Palpatine wasn't behind anything or any plots, or whatever it was that Fives was trying to claim he was responsible for. On the other side of this, Darth Sidious sent out his contacts to various bounty hunters from across the galaxy and across the underbelly of the city world. He wanted Ahsoka Tano and clone ARC Trooper Fives executed. He didn't care how it was done. All that mattered was that they were killed. The bounty hunter who brought back their heads would receive millions of credits, enough credits to retire for life. Sidious was willing to fork out the money because this was his entire plan. If Fives revealed anything to the Jedi, then he would be doomed. To add to Palpatine's requests, he gave the exact same command to Commander Fox and the Coruscant Guard, Coruscant Police, and Coruscant Detectives. Ahsoka and Fives were enemies of the Republic. They were attempting to overturn the democracy of their system, and they could not allow it. These people believed their elderly politician because when has a politician ever lied about anything? Inside of the 501st, Rex came up with his own alternative plans. He knew there were troopers with him who fought and served with Ahsoka since Christophsis. They would have undying loyalty towards her. He knew that very soon, he and a good number of his most elite men would be tasked with hunting down Ahsoka and Fives. So to ensure they never found them, he sent Jessie along with a squad of 20 volunteer clones to the lower levels to find and secure her location and safety, along with that of Fives. Rex understood Commander Fox, but he also knew that Fox would take that assault in the warehouse very personally. So to avoid any potential issues with Fox and his men, he wanted to keep everyone separated. His main goal was to protect Ahsoka and Fives. He knew that Fives had something of value, otherwise the Chancellor wouldn't be so focused on it. Something felt awry, and he felt it was his duty to his brothers to help the truth come to light. Down in the lower levels of Coruscant, Fives was waking up in a confused demeanor. He didn't know where he was or why he was here. He didn't even remember Ahsoka finding him, but she was by his side when he woke up. She told him everything she knew, and she gave him some new clothes so he could go incognito. Once she explained everything and realized how calm he was, she could tell that he was originally under some sort of drugged haze. Now that he was clean, he was speaking like the Fives she knew. He told her everything he knew, and he asked that she help him get the information to General Skywalker or Captain Rex or somebody. Ahsoka wasn't exactly on the same page with him. He did understand, but at the same time he didn't. Ahsoka didn't have anything against Anakin, but she wasn't exactly thinking about the Jedi with favorability. This was also an age thing. Due to barely being 17, she was holding a grudge against the Order. Her mindset was, she didn't care what happened to them, while deep down she definitely did care about what came from all of this. On the surface though, she told Fives that she could not help. She was already going to be in trouble enough for fighting off the clones and Commander Fox, because he held a grudge. Fives got up and told her that this was bigger than everything. This was bigger than the war, and it could save the Jedi and the clones from the forces of evil, not just them but the galaxy. Ahsoka leaned back and looked away. She understood where he was coming from, but she could not do it. There was a pull to stay away from the Jedi. In a sense, she was suggesting that even if it was the truth, the Jedi wouldn't believe it. Anakin was the only one who believed her. The entire council turned on her back and acted as if it was the will of the Force that she went through her trial. She told Fives that she was sorry, she truly was, but it was a lost cause, because not even Anakin showed belief in him. If they even survived Fox and his shock troopers, then they'd have to prove to the council something they clearly did not have. Fives shook his head, and he told her that she couldn't be real right now. Shocked, he was willing to listen to him. If it wasn't for Nala Se drugging him, then they wouldn't have any issues. Ahsoka denied this. Ironically, she was becoming even more Jedi by being reluctant. She continued and told him that as long as he stayed down here, she would protect him, but if he went up to the surface, she couldn't do anything for him. His heart broke, and he looked at her with sincerity and asked what happened to her. She used to be unstoppable. There was nothing that could keep her from achieving victory. Fives got up and looked at the clothes she brought for him, and took them into the other room. When he came back with his disguise, he said that he was leaving her, and she asked why. He told her that as a soldier it was his duty. He needed to say something, even if it got him killed. It was worth the risk to protect his brothers from what happened at the top. Maybe it was because she wasn't there, but if she had seen what happened to his brother, maybe she would understand. He was being semi-hostile with her, truthfully. He was very disappointed. While he of course was grateful for the help originally, he didn't know what to think of the person she had become. There was a depressing aura around her. He could understand that more than she knew. Before anything happened, he told Kix that he needed help, and someone brought shock troopers. Whether it was Anakin, Rex, or Kix, he didn't know. All he knew is someone betrayed him. However, it wasn't going to deter him from doing the right thing. Five started towards the door and turned back. He apologized that she was thrown from the order, but the Ahsoka he knew wouldn't ever let a little bit of adversity deter her. Even if she had the entire galaxy against her, she would do what was right for the sake of doing what was right. He frowned before turning his head and slipping out the door while putting a hat over his head. The words hit her with force as she watched Fives vanish from the warehouse. She was kind of upset with him. She didn't want to be called out like that. But there was a reality to his words. He told her a truth she did not want to accept about herself. Ahsoka was conscious enough to know that she had changed drastically since she was forced from the Order, but it was just hard to accept that she had changed that drastically, because that change was negative. She was a shell of her former self. She was living off the bare minimum, and she had no one but herself and her wits. The calmness and tranquility she had as a child soldier didn't compare to the rough exterior and hardened mind she lived with now. Was she pushing Fives away because she was afraid of helping, or was she pushing them away because the thought of change was as scary as the day she walked away from the temple? She had been out here on her own, and she didn't have any friends for months now. Now she had a chance to potentially end the war, and she let it walk out the door. Ahsoka pressed her hands to her face and tore herself apart within her inner monologue. She could not believe she was being so foolish, but could she blame herself? Ahsoka ran forward, slipping out the same door that Fives walked out of. She turned side to side and could not find him, so she called out his name. But here she was again, alone, in the dark, with no one. Down the street, Fives was moving through alleyways, avoiding the lights of the city. He needed to find a means of transportation to the Jedi Temple. It would be difficult. While Ahsoka's little get-up helped him stay relatively undercover, he knew it wouldn't last forever. He searched rigorously for a vessel to take, but the lower levels were much different than anywhere else in the city. Everyone was ready for war. As Fives was walking through an alleyway, he could see a couple of shock troopers interrogating people, trying to see if they'd seen the clone or the former Jedi. No one had, and so the troopers kept moving. Fives felt bad for what he said to Ahsoka. He wasn't wrong, but she was just a kid. There was no reason for him to be so cruel. Maybe there was, but he still felt terrible about the entire thing. That was against who he was as an individual. Now she was being hunted and even more secluded than ever before because of saving him. Fives turned around and ran into someone. The bump tripped Fives and his hat fell off of his head. He didn't realize as he helped up the citizen he knocked over, who said thanks before seeing the tattoo on Fives' forehead, and then called out for the shock troopers that just passed by, telling them he found the culprit. The clones ran back into the alleyway as Fives grabbed his hat and started running. As he ran around the corner, he looked forward and saw more clones coming his way, so he turned around and ran down the other street. As he was doing that, a shot rang out from the building overlooking the street. The shot missed, but some of the clones turned around and started firing on the sharpshooter. Rhaegar Hardeen had taken a job to kill a clone, and now he could kill more. His rifle blasted through a couple Coruscant guardsmen before he targeted Fives again. As Racco was getting closer to killing Fives, he shot another shock trooper. His scope then lined up perfectly with Fives' back, and he pressed his finger along the trigger, and before he could pull the shot, he felt scaly hands wrap around his neck and lift him off the ground. Racco panicked, and then he looked down to Bossk, who told him he had a bone to pick, before tossing Hardeen off the roof to his eventual death. Bossk picked up the little rifle, but it was too late. Fives was gone. The clone ARC trooper bolted around another corner, looking for help. He didn't know the layout of anything around here, so he was actively trying to find a place to lay low. He didn't even know where Ahsoka's safe house was anymore. Fives was able to hide behind a dumpster and wait for his brothers to pass by, before jumping one of them and knocking them out before using the stun gun to shoot the other men. He then set the weapon for kill. The Chancellor really wanted him dead, especially as shock troopers were down here looking for him. Fives continued moving around discreetly until he heard his name whispered from the side. He almost panicked, but he recognized the voice immediately. It was Ahsoka. She pulled him forward and told him that she was sorry. She understood she was wrong, but if they were in this to save the clones and whoever else, she was willing to do the right thing, no matter the sacrifice or the consequence. He smiled, and he told her that he was eternally grateful for her belief. He did ask if she saw the bounty hunter who fired on him. She did. Sadly, she didn't have her lightsabers anymore, so she was pretty much ineffective aside from close-range martial arts. He was fine with that, but it was good to know that she knew he wasn't delusional. Because if Palpatine was really the one behind it, it was clear he was panicked. Ahsoka knew, according to Obi-Wan, Racco Hardeen wasn't a cheap bounty hunter anymore. His prices only skyrocketed after he killed Obi-Wan, and because most bounty hunters didn't pay attention to the Jedi unless there was a bounty, most of them didn't know Obi-Wan didn't actually die. Regardless, Racco had a hefty price tag. Ahsoka told Fives that he must have really wanted him dead. Fives agreed, and they continued forward. At the same time, Jesse and his squad of volunteers found the incapacitated shock troopers, so Jesse called Rex and told him that there was more going on here. He didn't know why, but there were Republic troopers down here looking for Fives, even though the 501st was the only group assigned to this. Rex asked Anakin about it, and he had no clue why that might be the case. From what he understood, the Chancellor assigned him and Rex to find the culprits alone. Rex didn't want to throw accusations around, but he suggested that if there were other troopers looking for Fives, perhaps there was some truth in what was said about the Chancellor. Anakin looked to Rex and thought for a moment. He didn't want to agree, nor accept it, but he wasn't exactly wrong. If there was something Palpatine wanted covered up, then surely he'd have the credits to fund it. But why would he ever lie to him? It seemed uncharacteristic from Palpatine. Rex didn't want to intrude because he knew there was a strong bond between Anakin and Palpatine, but he also wasn't going to deny that Anakin allowed his personal biases to get in the way again. It's exactly why Jesse was tasked with this little plan, but Anakin now had his own issues. Why was Rex assigning his own men to find Fives when they were supposed to be looking for him together? Rex did admit that he overstepped his chain of command, but it seemed like they were going to let Fives just get killed for something that no one but he and Palpatine knew. Rex owed it to his brother to hear him out, and he knew that Fox took things personally. However, Fox would never act out of his jurisdiction, especially not without orders from the Chancellor. The fact that the clones were acting like this, with Palpatine having given Anakin's orders to do it with his own men, told Rex that something was up. Anakin was a little confused, but the reality is, Fox would be pissed about Ahsoka attacking him and helping Fives escape, but Fox would not go down and hunt Fives and Ahsoka unless the Chancellor himself told him to do it. Rex believed that if Fox or his men were seen in the lower levels looking for something, then it was fair to assume that there was foul play at hand. As it seems, there was now foul play, because Jesse very quickly reported that a couple of shock troopers had been taken out from a high-rise, which told the clones something else. There were bounty hunters involved here too, because the clones would not shoot at the ground, and Fives would not kill any of his own men, let alone Ahsoka. She didn't use blasters, and Fives had already proven, based on reports from Kamino, that he would not kill his brothers. Anakin was still a bit neglectful of the whole idea that there was foul play from Palpatine, but Rex had evidence to disprove his negligence. Only time would tell what would come from this investigation. Fives and Ahsoka moved up a couple levels over the span of a couple hours. There were an increasing number of Fives with their faces on them. While the Coruscant Guard was actively avoiding Rex and Anakin, thanks to probe droids in the lower levels, there were more bounty hunters on the prowl. This scenario for the clones was very similar to the one on Umbara. They didn't know why they were being informed to avoid certain quadrants, but they were simply given excuses. Palpatine knew that he could explain everything away if it was discovered that he sent the Coruscant Guard to find Ahsoka. He just didn't want to have any other stress in this situation. With more bounty hunters pairing up to hunt them down, everything got progressively more difficult. Their slow ascent to the upper levels was challenging, but they were able to get closer and closer to the top side. However, there was one addition to shock troopers that Palpatine had released on them. They were experiments being monitored by Dr. Hemlock on Wayland. Essentially, these clones were reprogrammed and stripped of their personalities. They were killing machines, and it was a good way to make use out of defective creatures. There were a number of these assassin clones chasing the Jedi and the clone. Palpatine was pulling out all stops to do this, but it was very quickly becoming evident as the hours turned into days that they weren't getting anywhere. Ahsoka and Fives were constantly on the run, and it made their alliance very strenuous. But if they hadn't been friends before this, it would have been extremely difficult for them to maintain this structure. They were entirely reliant on the other, and it was their only way to sleep, get food, or simply breathe. Ahsoka was having a difficult time without her lightsabers, and it was becoming evident to her that perhaps her original logic was correct, but they had gotten this far into it. There was no point to give up now. Ahsoka was working out of her comfort zone. Midway through day 3, the two of them were ambushed while they were taking a break to eat, and they fought off bounty hunters. Fives was able to grab one of their blasters, and Ahsoka was too. She definitely wasn't as skilled with a blaster, but she had no issue adapting to it. Palpatine was getting impatient. He knew based on the tone of his last conversation with Anakin that he was starting to notice something was awry, not to mention the fact that the Jedi sent another master into the depths to aid Skywalker's search. Kit Fisto would end up accompanying Anakin on his search, which is something Anakin welcomed. Fisto was a very compassionate being, and he understood how personal this assignment was for Anakin. Rex was a good friend and his presence was helpful, but Fisto was reassuring in a way that Rex wasn't. To Rex, there was something deeper going on down here. Jesse's squad was divided up, with 2 scouts following Commander Fox and tracking all their signals. It may have been treasonous, but something felt wrong. He couldn't just ignore his intuition. It hadn't failed him yet, and it was very clear that something ominous was going on with these clones. Rex had since stopped reporting new information from Jesse's squad to Anakin because he seemed very irritated with the entire mission Jesse was on. Rex wasn't sure if Anakin didn't want to believe that Palpatine was behind it, or if it was something else, but General Skywalker's personal feelings on the people involved were hindering their search. As the 4th night of the search fell into the city of Coruscant, Ahsoka and Fives found a new place to call home for the night. They were talking about how they could get into the temple, and Ahsoka laid out what she believed to be the best routes to get there. Most of their travel had been on foot, but they were able to make a trade with a cab driver for an incognito drive, which saved them about 3 days of on-foot walking. Ahsoka believed they had about another day or so of walking until they got to the temple. But the last half of their journey would be the hardest part. They needed to break free topside and then make their way for the Jedi Temple. Once they lost the cover of the Undercity, they'd become easy targets. Ahsoka told Fives that they needed to be their most efficient at that moment. He agreed, and suggested that he take first watch of the night. She thanked him and was able to fall asleep in their shelter. About an hour into his watch, Fives could hear something rustling around. He took his blaster and looked around. They found a place that had no access to them from higher points. However, that did not mean they were entirely safe. Fives walked over to the edge of the shelter and looked through a peephole. As he did, a smoke bomb dropped in front of him and a single shot rang out. He tried to move, but his eye was clipped and he fell backwards. Ahsoka jumped up quickly and saw him holding his eye in agony. She ran to his side and looked for a way out. There was no way out. This was a trap. One way in, one way out. She told him they needed to run out and escape. He told her to stop. It was a bounty hunter. She looked at the hole and could see a shadow walking towards them. Ahsoka pushed Fives to the corner of the room and she backed up, throwing her hands forward with all of her might, knocking the door off its hinges and smashing it into the bounty hunter. Ahsoka grabbed Fives' shoulder and pulled him along, giving him a clean cloth to hold over his eye. As they left, they could hear more clones. It seemed as if their territory was shrinking. Ahsoka shoved Fives in front of her as she kept an eye on their backs to make sure they weren't being traced. The two of them were already exhausted, but this would take all of their energy. Behind them, 2 lightsabers ignited and the men of the 501st poured in and around the area. They looked around and searched the wreckage. Fisto used the Force to clear the smoke around the area, and Rex went to investigate the bounty hunter under the mask. As he pulled the mask off, he jumped back. The reaction was enough to get Anakin and Fisto's attention. They walked over and saw that it was a clone trooper, but he wasn't wearing clone armor. Anakin told his men to fan out, see if they could find Ahsoka and Fives. He then told Rex to get a medic and a team together to interrogate him, get to the bottom of why this clone was hunting them. Anakin had since put it out of his mind that Fox and the Coruscant Guard were down here looking for Ahsoka. He was in a little bit of denial. The idea that Ahsoka didn't stop to say something and that Palpatine was behind some sort of evil plan caused him to reject the uncomfortable. He didn't want to believe any of this was happening. In the following 30 minutes, the clone would wake up and he would terminate himself after telling the clones that a storm was coming. They wouldn't know what hit him until it was over, and their Jedi friends would be the one to suffer the most from it. Instead of Palpatine's office, he got a call from Admiral Rampart. He was alone and the executive building was empty for the most part. Palpatine asked what the status was, and Admiral Rampart informed the Chancellor that the clones were being tracked by their own brothers. Rampart continued expressing that the 501st had a squad of 20 troopers following Commander Fox. Palpatine told Rampart to inform those men that they were commando droids. The Separatists were tracking the Coruscant guards so that they could get the Fives first. Palpatine was very adamant that they stole Pup from Ringo Vinda. Chances are they would do the same with Fives. There was a huge plot hole in this for Palpatine. The Separatists had no clue that Fives was a target. However, Rampart also didn't know that. He wasn't assigned to this mission until Commander Fox allowed Ahsoka to escape with Fives. Shortly after Rampart was given his new orders, Dr. Hemlock called Palpatine's office. He was really brief with it, but one of the CX troopers dispatched to find the clone trooper on Coruscant activated his self-termination device. He reported that the mission was a successful test run for their new protocol. Palpatine thanked his good doctor, and then he turned to Mas Amedda. He informed his good ally to prepare his shuttle. Mas asked where he was going, and Sidious told him that he would deal with these rats himself. Palpatine was going to kill everyone. Ahsoka, Fives, the clones, Fisto, Fox, it did not matter. Everyone was a target, and he had no issue doing away with all of them for the greater good of his future empire. Ahsoka and Fives continued moving as fast as they could until they found another hideout. She was able to look at the wound in his eye and help tend to it, but there was no way she'd be able to do anything medically sound. He would likely lose the eye like Wolf lost his. She was very apologetic for it, but he didn't blame her. He knew he never should have put his face so close to the peephole. It was his fault for being so careless. She told him to not be so hard on himself, but he was showing that he didn't think there was hope for him after all. He told her that she was right, and they should have listened to her plans. He shouldn't have tried to fight this. It was bigger than all of them, and instead of him being the only casualty, he dragged her into this. Ahsoka was calming by telling him that they would get to the other side of this. They just had to have faith in themselves. Not far from them, a shuttle landed. The Dark Lord of the Sith exited. He would deal with these ignorant fools. He wandered through the streets, holding a holopad which had all the details of every bounty hunter, the clone assassins, and the Coruscant guard on it. They were surrounding the area, but he had a feeling that he wouldn't need them. He marched forward into the darkness itself. Fives and Ahsoka prepared to leave when they heard some commotion outside. It was blaster fire, and they could hear the howl of a Trandoshan bounty hunter as it scoured away from what now became clear to the ear as clones. She and Fives looked to each other and prepared for combat, but Anakin ignited his lightsaber and told his former student they had gone far enough. They could not see them, all they knew is that they were in the shelter. It was time to stop this. Fisto backed up this point and told them that if they came quietly, they could be given protection by the Jedi. The clones weren't breaking. All of them had the same realization. There was something going on. Ahsoka and Fives didn't believe them, and so she told Fives to stay behind her. As she walked out of the shelter they had themselves. She looked at them and told them to stop. They tried to kill Fives last time, and she wasn't going to let that happen this time. Anakin looked to Ahsoka. He missed her so much, and it was painful to see how his little sister had grown up so much since the last time he'd seen her. He told her that was never the intention. Ahsoka snapped back. She called Anakin out for bringing the Coruscant Guard and defending the Chancellor. Fives was there, and no one else aside from the Chancellor was too. There was a plot. There was something truly terrible, and Palpatine was capable of it. Anakin looked to Fisto, and before a word could be said, a voice echoed out behind them. The voice was deep and raspy, and it told them that the Chancellor wasn't capable of the atrocities that he could commit. The voice felt like it was around all of them, and then a massive blast landed in the middle of the clones and Jedi, throwing them outwards and Ahsoka backwards. Sidious landed with a grin on his face and moved like a blur as Ahsoka tried to stop him. He moved quickly and slid his lightsaber under her shoulder and ripped up, before shooting electricity at her and flinging her into a pile of mud. Fives called out and Sidious turned over, using the Force, lifting the clone off the ground, pulling him from the shelter as he grasped for air. Sidious told the clone that he would die. As the Dark Lord raised his blade, blaster fire erupted towards him. Fives would be used as cannon fodder if it weren't for Master Fisto, who lunged forward. Sidious released Fives and ignited another lightsaber. He swung his blade around behind him, but Fives was gone. Ahsoka pulled him with the Force over to her before falling unconscious. Fives looked down and picked her up and ran with her. Rex told a couple of men to get to their side and defend them no matter what. They nodded their heads and went along. A few blocks away, Commander Fox and the Coruscant Guard lured Jesse and his men into a trap, killing them all. They believed they had done a service to their Chancellor until one of the shock troopers noticed that there was skin under their helmets, and the revelation caused total distress from the men. They realized they'd been set up. Fox, upon learning the news, fell to his knees in disgust. His own brothers were slain for no reason. He received intel from one of the probe droids that there was a commotion going on between clones and a mysterious figure a couple blocks away, and so they had to put down their sadness and get up and rush towards a fight. Master Fisto was handling himself against the Dark Lord. Sidious was having a difficult time, not because of Fisto, but because of the clones around him. Kit was concentrated enough to handle a fight with Sidious. Skywalker got to his feet and contributed to the fight. Their blades mashed together against the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord was a force of nature, blocking lightsabers and defending from blaster bolts. It was hard for every party involved. The clones were fighting against the Sith, but avoiding injuring the Jedi, while the Jedi were focused on the most powerful Sith the galaxy had ever seen. As their duel moved around, Sidious kicked Anakin off of his feet and shot electricity outwards. It immobilized the men of the 501st. They cried out in a collective agony as he spun back and turned both his blades against Fisto. The Jedi Master was backpedaling away, and it was becoming very difficult for him. As this was happening, Lieutenant Vong pulled by and picked up Fives and Ahsoka, bringing them to the Jedi Temple. This was done in Rex's command. Sidious focused all of his power on Fisto, before the sound of a lightsaber igniting caught his attention and he dipped out of the way. Just as the Coruscant Guard arrived, they saw all the men of the 501st knocked out, Ahsoka's arm, Fisto and Anakin in a bind, and then when Skywalker's lightsaber returned to his hand, they could see something else. The strike didn't land a damaging hit, but it did remove the Dark Lord's hood. Sidious looked disgusted, because he was now exposed. He turned to them and told them that all of them had to die now. Didn't matter if Anakin was going to be a student or not. It was too late. He required an empire, not a student. Sidious launched himself forward, but before he could land a hit on the Coruscant Guard, Anakin blocked him. Their blades toiled and Anakin found himself striking up an advantage before it slipped away, and as it did, Fisto stepped in. The battle continued to intensify as Commander Fox implemented strategies the Coruscant Guard used in capturing techniques. It was worth the risk of the Jedi. He didn't care. Droid poppers rolled out from their lines, and the clones turned their attention to the little bombs and shot them. This shot out a huge burst of electricity into all three fighters. Anakin went down first, and then Fisto, before Sidious turned his attention back. He fell to his knees, and threw all of his strength outwards, knocking down all the men of the Coruscant Guard, except for one. Commander Fox treaded the Force and walked up to the Chancellor and removed his helmet, before placing the end of his barrel on Sidious's head. He told him that he wasn't his Chancellor. Sidious ignited his lightsaber and drove it forward into Fox's chest. The Dark Lord smiled, but his surprise was met with the joyful gaze of a clone commander who saved all of his brothers. The trigger was pulled, and Sidious fell limp backwards. Topside, Ahsoka and Fives got to the temple. Fives was able to inform the Jedi of everything they saw, and Ahsoka got medical attention. Mace, Yoda, and Ki-Adi-Mundi would make their way to the lower levels with a handful of troopers, and find the mess left behind. It was true what he said, but how deep did this go? The Council didn't panic. Instead, they reacted diligently. They moved out as fast as they could, and they searched for all the information they could find. As it was revealed by the death of Palpatine, the Sith implemented controlling inhibitor chips into the clone army. The discovery of this, thanks to Fives, would save the clones from having to continue fighting this never-ending war. What the Jedi did was mobilize every ounce of their order and push them into the field. Some Jedi did a hostile takeover at Kamino. Others would do raids on Palpatine's residences, which would inevitably lead them to his lairs. There were plans laid out, and it was very clear, aside from the evidence the Jedi already had, that he was behind this. The truth is, the Jedi needed to prove a more grounded side of Palpatine's deception. Simply saying Sith wouldn't be enough, and the Jedi utilized everything they had. With Palpatine dead, the Republic became stagnant. Dooku actually prepared for a strike at Coruscant, believing he could win the war for himself, but a day before he left, his government turned on him. Because before all the documents were revealed publicly, Amidala and a couple Jedi representatives informed the CIS the truth, and they explicitly asked that the war come to a close before Dooku or Grievous do something erratic. This move saved Coruscant, because the CIS Council realized that their war to earn more corporate power was nothing more than a proxy war, and the best thing for them to do was save themselves. It was a gradual process, in the span of a few hours actually. First Wat Tambor and the Techno Union, then Newt Gunray and the Trade Federation. By the end of the day, they all abandoned and shut down their droids and reported the location of Grievous and Dooku to the Jedi. So, on the morning before the attack on Coruscant, Dooku and Grievous were captured and brought back to Coruscant along with a peace treaty signed by the Separatist government. It was decided that they would spend the next 5 years bettering the galaxy and slowly rebuilding into a new united system. It gave them time to peacefully heal and then merge into one galactic system. Palpatine and Dooku took all the blame, rightly so, for planning, starting, and executing the Clone Wars. Dooku and Grievous would get no freedom, and with the assistance of the Jedi, they'd be locked away in a prison that neither would ever be able to escape from. Maul would eventually join them in their eternal hell, the place that would watch them wither away until nothing but dust. The Jedi had done it, but no one was recognized more than Fives. He saved the Republic and probably even the galaxy. As more information came out, he realized how much he had done, but he stayed humble and continued with fighting for clone rights inside the Republic's Senate, which they would win too. Ahsoka would get her new arm and her recognition because she, like Fives, had saved the galaxy. She would stay best friends with Fives for the rest of their lives. The punishment exhibited to the Kaminoans would be harsh, but it would be just, and for the Jedi, it'd be the wake-up call for them to make things right. Ahsoka would eventually rejoin the Order and find home with it, but after its leadership did some serious soul-searching. The kind that resulted in an Order ready to return the Republic to a new golden era, as the Jedi once said and now would forever say, for light and life. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to Benjamin Wells, Jango Fett Clone, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 1767, Darth Revan, Grandaddy Bane, Laliand, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, RJ38, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewo670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Nox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sith Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Cali, Gunley66, Mammoth Studios, Anakin003, Lord Draken, Fortis League Star Wars, Airbus, Wax Wolf, Man 3 First Names, Dark46, Baron Joshua, and Denwing for supporting the channel. If you want to support me in other ways, go check out the Patreon, super cool things on there. Otherwise, let's talk about this story. The idea of doing like a crime drama where it's two people avoiding the law was kind of a fun concept and something I don't think we've ever done on this channel. It's such a small scale story and I've been yearning to do something like this, which is why it's so long, because I just wanted to do something on such a small scale. The idea of Ahsoka saving Fives seems so simple, yet it changes everything. But I wanted Palpatine to show panic in this. I wanted him to send everything he had, because if Fives got back to the Jedi, that would expose everything. And so I wanted the experience of this video to be Palpatine in a panic and him willing to do anything and everything to make sure the information Fives has doesn't get out, because that ruins everything he has, which is why at the end, he's willing to kill Anakin, even if it means losing a future pupil. So anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this story. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.